Yeah, right. See if I can, not make up nonsense. So. All right, I'm ready when you are, man. Let's do it.
Looks like it is setting up the meeting for YouTube Live.
Cool, I like it. YouTube Live, though, so is it going to save them? Oh, look at that.
Yeah,
live.
we're officially
setting up the meeting
live,
for YouTube Live,
which is cool.
I like it.
So
YouTube Live, though, so is it going to save them?
I know, it's definitely cool. I'm going to flip over here to Zoom now that we're officially live on YouTube. And
are you getting feedback?
I turned off the feedback. Did you hear the feedback?
It did, but we're better now. Good job.
We're better now. Okay, great.
All right.
Great. So I am officially recording. We are live. Josh Knipp with Knipp Law, local real estate attorney and just overall a growing entrepreneur and successful businessman. We appreciate being on this joint call today. I'm Mike Hege with Pridemore Properties, the broker in charge of the North Office and managing partner. And we thought we'd get on today and have some casual conversation, Josh, related to what we're seeing out there in the marketplace and as it relates to the new normal.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So
thanks for having me, Mike. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Sincerely, we've known each other for many years at this point. I think the world of your firm and what you've been able to build, and I had a light bulb moment,
wow.
that.
Wow. That's a good start. All right.
I tried to build that out just so you see it right at the right moment. That you've been building the practice now for some time. How are things changing from the current environment? How are you adapting?
Yeah, so I mean everything, right? So it's day by day. I mean, I'm sure you guys are the same boat. I mean, everybody in the country is just kind of day by day trying to figure out what's the best course of action. And I think more of I think the theme is problem solving, right? So every day there's some new obstacle, new problem, new opportunity, right? And come up with solutions for that and try to solve things. So, I mean, there's been a lot that's changed on a smaller level on the overview of things. I think things have changed more in your guys' world, probably the lending world. We will see that effect in May because we're like 30 days behind usually. So a lot of the stuff we're doing right now, other than the health stuff that we've changed it, revamped everything, have this in every room basically. But that hasn't really changed much because we're closing all the stuff that happened in early March. So if you went under contract in early March, mid-March, maybe, right about then is when this all went down. I remember actually I was in Florida on March 11th flying back. And I think that night was the first kind of State of the Nation address. And Tom Hanks got coronavirus and the whole world stopped. So that was, in the NBA, that was crazy, like hour and a half there on that night, like March 11th. And so, but nobody really thought much of it until probably for another week or two. So we had a lot of contracts put in play, which is not why we're not special, but we are essential because we got to clean out all that contract base. So we anticipate a little bit of a slowdown in May, but not nearly as much as we thought. You guys are, and that's why I lean on you, man. Like you guys are out there still selling homes, right?
We are, Josh. So stay-at-home order as it relates to Mecklenburg County, not related to other counties surrounding the Metro Charlotte, North Carolina area that are still deemed essential based on Governor Cooper's order. Obviously, it's up to the individual county, but most counties outside of Charlotte sided with the governor on that one.
Yeah.
And U.S. Department of Homeland Security in general deemed us essential as well. But Mecklenburg County, we obviously have a high dense population, and based on the modeling, and obviously we want to be safe. I mean, no doubt about it. We want to be safe. And the practices, wearing gloves, wearing masks, following CDC guidelines, social distancing, and what have you. They felt like they made a concerted effort, and we hope that it's temporary. We don't know when it'll pass, but at the moment we're able to show vacant properties. And we're able to show properties that we have a buyer has a vested interest in. In other words, if they went under contract, they're able to also preview it at that moment in time if it's occupied and or for inspections and the normal work that you'd expect. So we're also having to pivot. It's been interesting, but business is still consummating. No doubt about it. We're getting listings, and we have buyers that are wanting to go under contract that will be utilizing you guys' services. So to the earlier point, we are still actively showing, but there will be a lag time, and pending contracts numbers on a macro level in our market will certainly be impacted as we go on the next 30, 60, and hopefully not 90 days.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's something I had a question for you on was, so we're seeing year over year from this year versus last year, right? For last week and this week, we would expect our orders to be down quite a bit, right? They aren't. Like, we're down about 20% probably right now. When I ran on the last 8 days or whatever, and that's phenomenal. Now we are potentially anticipating that some of those terminate, right? So we don't know with, new unemployment numbers coming out and all that, but we anticipate some of that may terminate. But I've been shocked and pleasantly surprised at how many orders have come in the last 8 days compared to last year. And last year was a record year basically. So it's setting up, and I think you guys probably feel the same thing. The first 2.5 months of 2020 it was on fire. The market was on fire.
Yes.
We all anticipate that happening again, so long as everybody comes back to their jobs. We don't anticipate that going down, especially in this specific area, right? The Charlotte metro area. But I have been surprised pleasantly that we've had quite a few come through in the last couple of weeks. So you guys are still, you're somehow, however you're selling homes, either whether that's through virtual tours or what otherwise. I know the Real Estate Commission and I know the bar have come up with some decent tools, right, to help try to mitigate some of those things. Some forms are better than others, like we talked about that yesterday. But there's some good stuff out there. Like, how can we still do transactions and still do business? Because as I think I told you, I've told others, but I want to keep it on here, is every other occupation, I think, in the United States right now, specifically in Mecklenburg County, knows whether they stay home or whether they're essentially need to go to work, except for one job, and that is a realtor in Mecklenburg County. What are they supposed to be doing? So there's some gray area there that is fascinating. That's the one, of course, the people we work with the most is the one position that I can't give you a definitive answer of what they can and can't do. So
I think that, Josh, is related to how the order was written, and
right.
And then it came out with, I think, an attempt to clarify the order, and then it came out with an additional set of specific parameters. And in the end, I think they were factoring in. I think everyone knows that an open house for people that aren't, there's swarms of people is not a good practice.
Right.
And trying to practice social distancing and being safe.
Yeah.
So I think that one made sense for the masses, but I do think that real estate is a large part of the GDP, a large backbone of nationwide economy. And as it relates to local, I think the headlines might very well be, to the earlier point with Q1 being so strong. As we go into Q2, it's basically going to dip. The numbers are going to dip. And I don't think anybody argues with that, but all the economic indicators leading into, this medical crisis, and I'm careful to say that as opposed to the housing crisis that we experienced in 2008, where, most economists would agree that it was an L-shaped. It went straight down and stayed flat for many years, as opposed to what we fully anticipate and what I've read across the board is more of a V-shape. The question is, how sharp is that V? And part of that, as the other curve people are following more closely now, is flattening the curve as it relates to the number of cases presented with the COVID crisis. So, but I think as we come on the other side of this too shall pass. And I think we all want to have that optimism that we get on the other side of this. And I think current sellers are, they're wondering, can I even sell my home? Or buyers are wondering, can I even buy my home? And the short answer is they can. And we're pivoting to the new normal. And to the earlier point of virtual tours and doing online showings, we are able to process those requests. It's just a little bit different at the current moment.
Walk me through. So for if anybody's watching this from out of state, so say about some of my friends or family in Ohio say, this is it. We're finally moving to North Carolina. Pretty much all of them are here already, but let's just go with the ones that are still left up in Ohio. They want to come down. Walk me through, what are their options as a buyer when let's say they have just done a virtual tour with you and they do want to make an offer, but obviously maybe not obviously, but in the majority of scenarios, they want to actually see the house at some point. What are their options to go from, hey, we want to put an offer on this thing, but we also totally realize this is not the normal where we've seen this house yet. Can you explain some options there they might have?
Absolutely. And there's really the pre-buyer, and what you're referencing is the buyer that's active right now, making that decision. So for the person prior to that, getting to that place, drive-bys are still available on the way to the grocery store if you're nearby. You just can't physically get out and look at the properties, get out of the car. potentially. So it'd be one of those things where, if you're ready to make an offer right now, we've got a couple tools at our disposal. One is know that if it's a vacant home, where the owner is not occupying the space, and that could mean that they've got belongings inside, but they've just packed up and moved to Florida and they left it for light staging. You would be able to show it. So as long as you came prepared to wear booties on top of your shoes, taking off your shoes, wearing, normal practices that you're seeing already with social distancing and wearing gloves and masks and what have you, staying 6 feet apart. So they'd be able to show it in that scenario. And if someone were living there, obviously the virtual tour is the best scenario. I have seen some agents out there with walkthrough videos on their phone. We try to hire folks that are able to give us a really high quality images. If someone's inside and they're not able to leave their house due to immunocompromised conditions or what have you, if they're in Mecklenburg County versus outer counties, as we mentioned, you can totally see those properties depending on the seller, depending on the agent, and what their firm's policy is as it relates to showings. In Mecklenburg County, we have utilized a few different addendums. There's one that was put out by the state that allows to basically to pay to play. And if the local order allows for a showing, you can pay for the showing to have a vested interest. Money back as additional deposit money that you'd be credited on any other.
I think I saw that.
That's one from the state level. We use another one that we kind of like a little better, where there's a lower dollar amount for maybe more of an extended time period, potentially at minimum to do the walkthrough to understand you do like a property or not, but then also to have an inspection potentially and kind of get a little along the due diligence. Because I think for a buyer without looking at a property, let's face it, I mean, it's kind of scary to think about. Go completely sight unseen.
Right. And tell me if I'm wrong, but the market before this started, due diligence was becoming more expensive, right? And
it was
going up and up. So it used to be, $100, whatever. But I know due diligence numbers we've seen have gotten higher and higher. So the idea of, I'm just throwing due diligence away that's a real number now. Like that's
a real number.
500,000, it becomes real. That's yikes,
So it is. So what we're suggesting is that in someone that scenario, one, they'd really have to know that they want that neighborhood, those community assets. They've been looking, they know 100% they're going to want to move forward, and they want to move forward with seeing the property first. Their options are, we'd have a conversation with the agent and say what their policy is on showings. Is it occupied? Is it not? And would the seller entertain, an offer related to a contingency for a walkthrough? And that would be tied up with a vested interest at that point, and then they would whatever that looked like and what was agreed upon with all parties, and then at that moment in time they would do the walkthrough and then decide, hopefully with very little if not any money invested, if at all possible, to then decide, do I want to move forward with the purchase or not. And then if not, there's lesser risk by having it set up that way. So that's what we're moving towards. And I mean, everyone hopes that, we get on the other side of this. And, I'm not sure they're going to lift as of the moment of this recording. I'm not sure on April 16th that by the end of the month, we're realistically going to full blown back to business. I think it's going to have to go in phases and, be smart about it, because all it takes is one person. And now we're back to square one. And I think we don't want that either. So,
gotcha. Quick aside. Sorry if you hear the beeping noises. So, and also the formatting. So, my laptop has broke. Great time for that to happen. It's pretty impressive, actually. There's that.
Man.
So we borrowed the wife's iPad, and apparently she's getting some friend requests on Facebook. So I'm monitoring now. I'll let you know how that goes as this meeting goes on. But no, that makes sense. Yeah, we don't know what's going to come out of this ultimately in our world. And we've made some changes already, and we've adapted to what we can adapt to. There are a couple things that I'm pretty vocal about when it comes to the state of North Carolina. I think we are behind, unfortunately, on remote notarization as a perfect example. So we've been able to adapt, and most firms are adapting in some way. Some have shut down. Some have just said, hey, we're not doing closings right now. And that's, hey, they're proud. I get that. It's a scary world right now. So some have shut down. Some have done just mail aways, which is really a nightmare, frankly. for many reasons. For the clients, it's just a really bad experience. And then there's these kind of drive-through closings. There's still some questions there that I don't have really well answered of how that works better and is safer than coming in. But in our case, just to give you one example, not saying we're the best or doing it completely, the only way that can be done right, but we basically sent everybody home. But for the audience there, we have 7 offices around Charlotte. We pretty much closed all of them down to 3. And so we funneled all the other ones that would normally close in, let's say, Kannapolis or Fort Mill or Denver, our Denver office. We funneled them all to here in Cornelius, where I'm at right now, our Concord office, and then shit down to Charlotte, our Dilworth office. So we funneled folks into those 3 offices, and we pretty much sent everyone home except for an attorney, and we have 1 staff person in each office. So that gives us 6, and then we have our administrative office that has 2 people in it. So we literally have 8 people only, and we have 29 overall. We have 8 people actually in office to minimize how many people are coming in. And it's also the same people every time. So just in the off chance that one of us does actually contract this, it's really shutting down those 2 people. Like those 2 have to go home. Like if I get it, Casey also has to go home. That's just how that goes. But we're not really intermingling a whole lot, so we could still stay active. So we did all those things, but the part about it that I probably was speaking out of turn, but I'm fine with because it's really obnoxious, is we're not allowed to do what you and I are doing right now. There are 23 other states in the United States that can do this for closing. Now, maybe not the Zoom thing. I don't actually not a big proponent of the Zoom thing either, because there are the Zoom bombs and we don't know who's on this right now. But yeah, so confidentiality still plays in there, but there is a software, there's already the technology out there. And I'm not the most technologically savvy guy that showed you from my laptop, right? But I understand how this works. It's called RON, R-O-N, and it's a remote notary platform. And it's a way that you can go in through a secured portal. The lenders have to be on board with it. There is a little bit of still holdback there on the secondary market, but there are some lenders that are ready to do it locally here in Charlotte. And we're ready to do it. We're basically ready to turn on the system. Unfortunately, in North Carolina, to be a notary, you still have to sign in the presence of the notary. And in the presence is still defined as you and I physically being in the same room. Physically. Or physically being able to see them. Versus what you and I are doing right now, there's other states doing this right now. Virginia's been doing this for years. Virginia's our neighbor. Like they're not far away, right? This isn't just that's what's done in Ohio. Like, no, it's what's done right. Our next door neighbor does this. And where I bring all that up is not as a complaint. I bring that up as there is a potential that there we go. Who we got? We got a visitor. But at the end of April, the legislature gets back in. So I want to make sure everybody knows April 28th, I think, is when the legislature goes back into session. There's already a couple proposed bills out there. I don't know. I haven't seen the specific language on the remote notary one, but it sounds like they are going to be discussing that seriously. Wow. And they could pass something that may just be a temporary thing during this pandemic, or it may be something that's great going forward. And there's some attorneys that are fighting it. There's some attorneys that don't. They think it's opening up, basically will open up the slippery slope and create a bad experience for the client and the consumer. But I don't see how this. I see it as another tool. I see it as another way to, obviously in this exact scenario, hey, why do folks have to come in here to do a refinance? Let's say, why are they coming in here to do that? Well, we can do these documents right here. So when the technology is there, let's use it. So that's something that's coming down the pipe, which is good. And then the second thing that was unknown, that was a big one, because we hear that a lot. I'm sure a lot of your clients, hey, can I sign this stuff electronically, right? Your contract is signed electronically. It is signed almost all their loan documents are signed electronically. Yeah. Everything. And then they show up here, and there's plenty of lenders right now that have most of their loan documents that they do the morning of on their phone. And it's amazing. It's a phenomenal process. And they still have to come here and sign like 12 things. Those 12 things also could be done, maybe not electronically, but they could do it on wet paper, wet ink here. We do the remote rules correctly, click through the way we're supposed to do it. Now, there is actually an electronic note, which would get rid of all paper, which would be amazing. But I'm not trying to be greedy. I'm trying to get piecemeal. Let's just find a way that we can. There are certain folks that are truly not comfortable coming into an office right now, and we should still be able to serve them and help them out. And right now, we just can't. It's not a Knipp law process. It's just our state law says that we cannot do a notary unless you're in the presence of. The second thing that's come out I want to touch on is there's all these title insurance companies. This is for more your lender friends, and you guys know a little bit, but the buyers and you guys don't get mixed up in this too much. the lenders and title companies have come up with this form that talks about we can close. So this, let's say, it seems like we've gotten over the hump here on April 16th. It sounds like we got over the hump, but this was a real question back on April 1st of we close today and tomorrow the register of deeds closes. They're like, nope, we're not recording. We're sending everybody home. We're doing a national shutdown. We're all staying home for 2 weeks. There was this talk, and there's a lot of forms out there that talk about we could still close. And there's this gap insurance, this gap indemnity letter that everyone signs that seller says, hey, we will take out no loans, no judgments. And the buyer says, we won't be able to take a loan out. You close on the 1st, and on April 3rd, we allegedly could record. Sounds great. And it would actually work in a lot of other states. And I think it would actually work in South Carolina because we don't have a recording race. It's called a race state in North Carolina. We have to record before that property is owned by the buyer, right? Still not really an issue yet, except for this gap thing said that the attorneys could disperse. We could do everything we need to do, which means paying off the loan to the seller, right? Giving keys to the buyer. That's under disbursement. Problem is there's a state statute out there, which I'm actually okay with this state statute. I think it should stay. It's called the Good Funds Settlement Act. And that thing said an attorney legally cannot disperse until they've recorded. So there was a workaround to get around the idea of, hey, we're not on record, which is great. I applaud them for their logic and their thinking, but it missed this law that was out there that I can't just say, it doesn't apply. Like it still applies. Unless the legislature does something about it, which I'm not advocating they do. I think we should keep it that way. I think if truly the registry needs closed across the state, we do have to I think we just have to pump the brakes and slow real estate down for a while. But I will say, I feel a whole lot more confident now than I did 2 weeks ago. I don't think it's going to happen. I just don't anticipate that happening.
No.
The register deeds done a great job with I think some of them are working from home. I know, and if they're not, they're in the office, but everything's being done electronically recording. We're not going into the courthouses or the register of deeds and actually recording documents, which again kind of leads to the idea of if we're already doing that, we should be able to do remote notary. But I think I beat that dead horse. So, yeah. So those are the two big things we've seen. I'm sure your clients will hear that, and especially if they're coming from other states that are doing things like, hey, what do you mean? When we sold our house in this state, we didn't have to show up. Unfortunately, you still got to show up here. And then the second one is, hey, wait a minute, why can't we close? Just because they're not going to record, we didn't have to do that in another state. Again, North Carolina, just the way we're set up right now, still have to do things the way we've done them, always done them.
And they've been doing it that way for some time.
Since, about 1781, I think, yeah. So,
1781?
Yeah, I think when Yorktown happened, I think it's about when that started. Yeah.
We moved very quickly in North Carolina. No. Josh, what I'm hearing you say is that you're anticipating that there is going to be some dip. I know on the listing side, I think we mentioned we're about 27% down from this time last year.
Okay.
So we fully anticipate that, and a large part of the hedge funds that were on our market that were purchasing the Open Doors of the world, the Zillows of the world, they've dried up their funding right now. And I've been saying this for a few years that's the first froth to go. Because it's one of those things that it works really well in a bullish market. When you have some dips, it's really hard to man the staff and hard to manage that type of thing when the margins are somewhat skinny and you start a model off that way. Obviously, there's tremendous upside in a bullish environment as well. So it made sense where they were born. But I'm not sure on the other side of this, we may see, I think the concept sounds good, but what it really showed me is that at the heart of it, people want someone to talk to in times of a crisis and times of things aren't going well. And you can't call a 1-800 number or a robo service and get that personalized service or touch. I think that's what I've loved so much about, our business relationship and friendship over the years, that if I can call you up with a situation that we're going to look at a collaborative solution to troubleshoot together. And, that's really what it takes to have a winning partnership in businesses and life in general. But that collaboration, I'm very much grateful for to you guys and all of your work and jumping in.
Agreed. No,
take care of these problems on an ongoing basis.
Thank you. I appreciate that a lot. But no, you're absolutely right. And I think there is something to be said for that. We were definitely, and this isn't going to get too macro, but definitely going more globalization and even national, hey, we're hitting everything's big national, everything's big hedge fund out of New York, whatever that may be in your guys' world. But you're seeing that also on the same level of I know big agencies out there. I know Pridemore is, you guys, your model is probably set up for this, and you guys can persevere through this. Same with us versus a big title company. They won't work, or a big law firm. It just won't work that way because they have a lot of overhead and a lot of staff that maybe they can't handle that piece of it. But I've seen it also with this PPP, right? The payroll protection program. A lot of small businesses. I talk with a lot of them. We're interacting with a lot of them. Yeah. They have found pretty much across the board, if you had a good relationship with a local banker, small local, community bank, you're good. If you're with one of these big boys, you're not so good. You're still kind of waiting. You're hanging in the wind, right? It kind of goes. There's an analogy there with lenders, and you and I work with some really good lenders that are on smaller. They're more agile, right? They have the ability to still. They're going to come out of this just fine. And they're also the ones that are going to probably figure out the electronic closing side quicker than the bigger ones. They're going to be left behind. So I think this has I do think has reset the market across the board of, like you said, that personal touch, a little bit more of a, we all thought, we're going to go online and get our mortgage. We're going to go online and buy our house and go online and do our closing. It's like, wait, we might want to talk to somebody. I've said, I make that joke a lot and I stand by it. Like if when Amanda, my wife, asks me, Josh, what do you do? I go, if a file goes well, I don't do anything. Like, I don't have to do anything. It's if there's a question or a concern or somebody else in the transaction, there's an issue, that's where our value is, right? That's when we actually provide value and can help. And I think that's being reinforced right now with, if there's a problem, we need someone who comes with solutions,
I mean, and you nailed it. I mean, from that standpoint of being solution oriented and providing those solutions. And I mean, in an age, Josh, where we're drowning in information. I think people are starving for wisdom. Yeah. And at the end of the day,
that's deep.
That was pretty deep. I know it's pretty deep.
I like that.
And coached by some good people that, and part of what we've done too is really kind of guarding our minds. I think there's a lot of, there will be so much in the media that's a sizzle reel, and there is some unfortunate, unprecedented events that we're all undergoing and experiencing firsthand that's never been done before. So the reality is we don't have a crystal ball. We don't know what the other side of this looks like, but we feel pretty good. And I think it's a general consensus that all the indicators leading into this medical crisis is when this lifts, whether that be a vaccine or whether that be flattening the curve, whether that be continuing the path and the governor of each state municipality and or ordinances start to lift in phases. And we come back to the realization that there's still this pent up demand, at least from a housing perspective. Yeah. If you're bottlenecked in, there's a real possibility right now. I've heard a few cases as a practical example of families staying with family during this time. Yeah. And they actually have said, you know what? I love you guys. I mean it, but I got to get a house. I got to get out of here.
Oh yeah, I got you. Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I think there'll be some pent up demand.
Well, shoot, all those folks that probably downsized the last 5 years because their kids went to college and now they're back.
Yeah, you've heard this term before, Josh. Baby chasers. Have you heard that before?
No, I haven't. What's that? No, I'm going to be educated today. That's good.
We aim to serve. Ain't no mountain high enough. We just.
So you got to tell me what that is now.
So baby chasers are when the family moves into a new area. We have a lot of this. And there could be potentially a huge uptick from the Northeast or even Ohio and other places, particularly like New York and California, where the property taxes are $20,000, $30,000 for a piece of property. And a comparable one here is a fraction of that. This might be the straw that breaks the camel's back. Yeah. Say, I want to move to a place like Charlotte. And by the way, my kids live there. Yeah. I've loved it. And the grandkids, i.e. baby chasing.
Oh yeah. My mom is one of those. So, yeah, my mom and dad,
Who knew?
We called almost 10 years ago. My oldest will be 10 in August. And we called found out my wife was pregnant and said, hey, Amanda's pregnant. And my mom goes, all right, I'll put my papers in. I'm going to retire from Ohio and come down in like 2 months, which was awesome. And I don't know how people live without that. But
yeah,
definitely. I didn't know there was a term for it. So yeah, she was definitely a baby chaser. Definitely.
Definitely on that.
That's pretty funny. I will inform her of that tonight. I'll give her a call. And that's been the hard part, right? I mean, I'm sure you have the same scenarios, but we have not seen my mom and dad. They live in Davidson. They live across. We actually live in Cornelius, this little called area, Crown Harbor. Across the little harbor there is Davidson Landing, those condos, and we are 5 minutes from each other. And we have not. She's done a couple drive-throughs in the neighborhood. My kids will go outside and wave at her. but we haven't seen them for a month. So I mean, I totally respect anyone out there going through, actual life, and we're not minimizing what this is, but I like what you've said today, and I agree with it. Is I don't see the doomsday on the backside of this. I think we're not in the best of times, and we're not in the worst of times either. Like, this is kind of we're going to get through this, and it's going to come out the other side. It's going to be pretty good, especially where we live. We're very fortunate there. Yeah. To your point, I think this is going to be the straw that breaks the camel back on people from the north. It's snowing there again today. Can you imagine? You've been in your house for 6 weeks with your kids and everybody, and it snows. You can't even go outside. Like, I'm moving to Charlotte. I'm out of here. I'm moving to Cornelius. I'm moving to Huntersville. I'm out.
Somewhere warm.
Yeah, absolutely. So, no, I think you're right. But yeah, no, I think what you guys are doing at Pridemore is pretty good, and I think you guys are coming through this perfectly fine. And I think it's going to be in a good way. I think there'll be almost a natural cleaning out of certain attorneys, lenders, realtors that maybe weren't providing the best service to begin with. So leaves folks like you around, which is awesome.
Well, I'm certainly grateful. I know you are as well. And we never take it for granted. I mean, really, if this is your career, and feel fortunate now going on 15 years, and got Pridemore over closer to 25. And we've been, we just on a growth path of, we're not trying to be the largest, employee deck. We like it where it's personal, and we're set up in large ways similar to a law firm, where we want full-time agents that are taking great care of their, servicing their clients' needs and acting as a strong fiduciary. So we're grateful and blessed that we've continued to provide that service for all this time, and we'll hopefully continue to do it. And hopefully with partnerships with yours, man, we're able to weather the storm, get on the other side. And it is comforting to know that cross-firm metro market Knipp Law, you guys are still closing transactions. The numbers are down a bit, but they are still moving forward. So it means people are buying here. And here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, it's going really well. Yeah, I think folks are definitely in. People got to move, and they want to move, here. I mean, the Southeast is really doing well, explicitly Charlotte area. So last, then we got to get rolling on this thing. But last thing, put it on the spot. So what's been the favorite family activity you guys have done?
That's a great question. I think the family activity so far is we went to Birkdale. We went on the green space.
Yeah.
And there was absolutely no one there. It was a day that Kilwins unfortunately said, it was right before Easter. They wanted to hit the pause button, and went in to support them, went in to support our local businesses and, friends and family. And we're able to enjoy some time with them, enjoy having a meal, but we had it right there in the green space. And then, from there, I just think being out in nature is so powerful right now. And I would say a close second, I know you didn't ask this, but since we're talking, we're creative juices are flowing as it relates to the kids and keeping them entertained, because restless kid syndrome is a real thing.
Oh yeah.
It's a real thing. We have found there's in our neighborhood, they have people have been putting out painted rocks. And so they have a scavenger hunt, but on the rocks, every one of them have a powerful message.
That's cool.
And faith or hope or peace, and just these principles that are good to remind ourselves during times like these. So how about you, Josh? What are you doing? What the family doing so far that,
So my family's done great with it. I've been working probably more than I did before this started. So I get home and we spent some good time with family, especially on weekends. It's been really nice on weekends. And look, we miss going to sports. My oldest plays lacrosse. My little guy was about to start baseball. My daughter does gymnastics. That's all been shut down. So it's sad, but it's been nice on weekends waking up on Saturdays and Sundays and not having somewhere to rush to get to at 9 a.m. or 10 on set. So that whole slowdown during the weekend is real. And it's been kind of nice hanging out with them. But the best thing that's happened was my oldest son. So he's replaced me as the father figure, apparently. He taught my second son how to ride his bike without training wheels, which was really cool. And it was unbelievable. So the bikes, my wife got a bike. There've been a lot more bicycling around the neighborhood, bicycling out around. We have a park nearby the house. So that's been pretty cool. And I definitely think, who knows down 20 years from now, but I think my 3 kids have probably they're going through something right now that I think they will remember and they will talk about. I think they are getting closer. Not that they weren't close beforehand, but again, they're all doing their own thing all the time. They've had to collectively, unified. That's gonna be a problem when this does stop, and if they ever do get back to school next year, we're gonna have to try to get them to sleep back in their own rooms again. You know, because they're just collectively hanging out together. And like, oh, let's watch a movie tonight, and they'll fall asleep. Like it's almost like a sleepover every night. So,
I know
we have to but it's been cool. Like it's been neat to watch those three kind of come together, and I think this is gonna really unbelievable bonding experience that wouldn't probably have happened otherwise.
Well, that's definitely the way to look at it as a positive and a blessing. Where so many people talk about the shift as a gift, and in general, and I think right now what we're experiencing is enough of a pause to remember that the things in life that are very important that we all are striving to work so hard for.
Yeah.
And having a warm home to come home to, having a loving home with family and friends, and really the things that we miss. They say that absence makes the heart grow fonder. And it's really true for just hanging out with your friends, or being able to have a social drink together, or being able to go to a sporting event together. And just when things do lift, I mean, we're all going to be back to the swing of things before you know it. But we'll probably look back on this time and say, this is one way that I would have not pictured, but to focus on the blessings of what we do have, as opposed to worrying and fretting about the things that I can't control. So
correct. Yep. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Awesome. Agreed.
Sir Josh Knipp with Knipp Law. I cannot thank you enough, brother, for jumping on today. I hope the audience here found value in our conversation. We plan on sharing this all over social and just promoting it. So we appreciate your time today. I'm Mike Hege with Pridemore Properties. Josh Knipp with Knipp Law.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it, man. Thanks, everybody.
Absolutely. All right, I'm going to hit the stop button, and on the live. We are going to stop live.
All right.